Hello, everyone. Dr. Tracy McCready here at Rhombus University. This is October the 23rd, or excuse me, the 26th, 2023. And we are here this evening for the live streaming class with Professor Fred Blackburn. He is here to discuss the Philosophy of Mind Part 4. So we are happy to have him here. So take it away.
All right. Thanks so much for having me back.
Absolutely.
And we're going to wrap up this series tonight. Last week we talked about more the physicality of the human brain, which is definitely outside of my wheelhouse. I'm a metaphysician, not a physician, but I like reviewing that stuff and I think it's so interesting. And then we spent some time talking about different Eastern meditation techniques and how some of these practitioners were actually able to control their brain waves through different states of meditation. And I thought that was really interesting and potentially helpful. So tonight we're coming back into my wheelhouse, though, and I'm really glad you all wanted to talk about the cross-cultural psychology and what that looks like if you happen to be counseling someone that is not from your culture, and some of the things you're going to have to look for and to be careful of. So let me pull up my PowerPoint. All right, so Philosophy of Mind and Mental Illness, Part 4, Cross-Cultural Philosophy. And first, I wanted to go over a few key terms that will be pertinent tonight. The first, of course, is anthropology, which means the study of human beings. And so, as you can imagine, it's incredibly broad. You can study art, architecture, religion, sociology, food, marriage, death, anything having to do with human beings would come under this umbrella of anthropology, including the physicality of humans. Next is race. And at least in anthropology, the way we define race is these are biological or genetic traits. So these are things you are born with. Culture is different from race in that culture is learned behavior. So that's in really broad, easy strokes. That's how we would distinguish race from culture. Ethnicity is a little more nuanced because it is learned behavior like culture, but it's usually associated with a geographical region, which doesn't have to, but usually means there's going to be some race involved as well, depending on how many races you think there are. But we'll get into that in a minute. The next big word is enculturation. And that's a fancy anthropology word, which really means indoctrination. And all of us have been enculturated into the groups that we're living in today, or else we were brought up into a certain group and maybe we didn't like it and we went and found another cultural group that we liked better. But everyone is indoctrinated into the norms, values, and ideals of their culture. Can anyone tell me what a norm is? It's just what you think it is.
Considers normal.
What is considered normal? And our society tells us what is normal. And so we become immediately aware if someone is acting or behaving in an abnormal way because we have been conditioned from childhood to what are the normal parameters of behavior. However, if you go to a different culture, what is normal there may very well be abnormal here. How about these words? You all know what a racist is, right? Or I hope. Okay. What's instead of being a racist, we have people that can become ethnocentric. What does it mean? What is ethnocentrism? It's similar to racism, but different.
Is it kind of like when you show a preference for someone of your own background?
Yes.
So maybe you're not outright discriminating, but maybe you give a job to someone else by virtue of them being of the same, I don't know, ethnic or religious affiliation, something of that sort. I don't know if that's correct.
Ethnocentrism, very good. And you're judging and critiquing other ethnicities based upon your own. So just like racism, where you're holding like your race as a standard and any other race that doesn't measure up to it, you might find lacking in one way or another. In ethnocentrism, it's the same except with culture. And we're all raised to be ethnocentric because we're taught from a young age the way to sit, the way to talk, the way to walk, etiquette, manners. And so when people aren't doing those things, we're already going to be in a something's wrong there. They're not doing it right. They're not normal. And so culture is so powerful in creating these templates for us. Values, those are the things your culture holds high and with regard. What would be, give me just a couple American values. You hear people rattle them off all the time.
Freedom.
Freedom. Liberty.
Fighting for freedom, even,
Yes.
and service for freedom.
Justice, democracy, all of those sorts become like American values. And then ideals are a notch above. And these are these things we're shooting for as a culture. Things like life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness would be American ideals that we're striving for. And so each culture is going to have a different set of norms, values, and ideals. In cultural relativism, it is descriptive. And what I mean by that is a cultural relativist is simply telling you in different times, in different places, people are doing things in different ways. It's not putting any value judgment on them. It's not saying you're right or wrong. It's just recording. In the 1800s on the Great Plains, the Lakotas had these values. In 17th century Tahiti, these indigenous people had these values. And so it's not saying they're good, bad, or indifferent. It's just telling you what they are. Now, in my other discipline, ethics, we have something called ethical relativism. But unlike cultural relativism, ethical relativism is prescriptive. In other words, it's telling you how you ought to behave, not how people are behaving, but how you ought to behave. And an easy way to remember that one is when in Rome, do as the Romans. That's the bottom line for ethical relativism. So you need to be aware of the norms, values, ideals, and laws of your culture, because if you don't, you could find yourself incarcerated or punished in some way. Same thing, if you're traveling abroad, I would highly recommend you briefly go over and make sure you understand the norms, values, and laws of that country, because what may be acceptable here may not be acceptable somewhere else. And it could be everything from dress code to women driving to male-female interactions with people that aren't your immediate relatives. So it's important if you're going to travel. But as it applies to psychology, I would say the same thing. If you know you have a client that's coming from maybe an Indonesian background or a Moroccan background or a Southeast Asian background, you might want to brush up a little bit on that culture and find out some of the basic norms, values, and ideals, because it could be radically different than where you're at in Southern California or wherever you may be. And then, of course, the last is worldview affects anthropological analysis, and we'll spend a lot of time in that later.